So what we're going to talk about today is how to destroy your business and remain complacent. This is by far the biggest thing that I see when we're taking on portfolio companies is that people's current day success is exactly what creates their future failure. And so I want to break that down in this video so that you can prevent yourself from destroying your business like so many do. So what typically happens in a business is that when you start, there's a ton of urgency, there's a ton of energy, and everyone's attacking it, right? Like they're always acting with speed. And then what happens is as your business continues to go up, you gain success. People start to feel a little more complacent. They start to feel more comfortable and they start to kind of settle in. And then what happens is what follows success and complacency is decline. And so this is what you typically see in the S-curve of a business. People start to get comfortable. They start to ask for more money, more time off. Now, people aren't attacking it with urgency. It takes you 10 times longer to get anything done. And then eventually you're like, why is my revenue going down? Why is my profit going down? And why do I have so many expenses when things are starting to decline? And so that's what I really want to get into is explaining how that happens and how you can prevent it in your business. So back in 2019, when I owned Gym Launch had exploded in early 2017. And for about 2 years, everything was super easy. And the reason it was easy is because we had really good product market fit and timing in the market. And we also had great complementary skill sets between me and Alex. And so honestly, we got a little lucky. And so 2019, I woke up one day and I was like, what the hell is going on with this business? We'd been plateaued at the same revenue for the last like 6 months. And though it was obviously really good and we were making a lot of money, I felt like I wasn't making any progress. And I looked at the team and I felt like everyone was really complacent. People weren't acting quickly. People were taking immense time off. People weren't even getting a lot of work done, even though they had no work on their plates. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And what I didn't realize, I started studying it. I started studying the S-curves in business is that we weren't attacking the business like we were in the beginning. Essentially in the beginning of a business, people have all this fear and insecurity because the business is not big yet. It's not steady. And so you're constantly speed attacking everything. And then what happens over time is that, especially leadership, it starts to get complacent because you feel like almost exhausted. You're like, we've just built this thing. It's taken all this effort. And then what happens is that it starts to seep through to the rest of the organization. And eventually you see a decline. And so if right now in your business, you're plateaued, typically what follows a plateau is a decline. So I want to talk about how to not decline in business, how to avoid that, and how to reverse this cycle. What you have to understand is that this is always stemming from the fact that you've gained success. You see it all the time. It's why people who lose weight gain the weight back. It's why people who get a lot of money and get rich then eventually lose all that money. It's because a lot of people change their behavior once they attain success. And so what you have to understand is that this ultimately doesn't necessarily just stem from your product in the marketplace. It stems from the behavior in your company. So let's break that down. There's a quote that I really like, which is, you can go through life as either a thermometer or a thermostat. Don't be a thermometer, because if you're a thermometer, you're just reflecting what's around you and just showing everybody. Whereas if you're a thermostat, you are setting the temperature and controlling the room. And so what happens a lot of the time is that in the beginning, we're the thermostat. We're constantly controlling the temperature. And then over time, we become the thermometer. We're just checking the temperature. We're not driving like we once were. We're just accepting what is. And a lot of times people just say, you're right, maybe I'll start another business. Maybe I'll do a side gig. I'll get into real estate. People start to get all these different interests when their businesses plateau because they can't figure out how to grow it. And what they don't realize is it's often not as simple as we need a new product, we need new marketing. We have to undo all the ingrained behaviors in our team that is now preventing us from scaling and getting any bigger. The behaviors are the hardest part of change. If you study change management, changing the strategy, the business, the pricing, the marketing, even the product and the people you sell to is not nearly as hard as changing the ingrained behaviors that you've done for the last 1, 2, 3, 4 years in your team and that have now settled in. Because changing someone's behavior, one person's alone, think about how hard it is to change your own behavior. Think about changing hundreds of people's behavior. That's exactly what you have to do. And so the question is, if you need to reset the thermostat, if you're like, Layla, I feel like this is exactly what's happened, is that we've gotten really successful. People have gotten a little bit of an air about themselves, a little bit of an ego, and they fall into this place of complacency. Then you have to ask yourself this question. If I wanted to destroy this business, what would I do? One, I would make sure that everyone was just doing their job, clocking in, clocking out, rather than on a mission trying to accomplish something big. I would make it very transactional. I pay you, you do these things, and then you leave. I wouldn't want any of their ancillary time on the business. The second is I would set zero deadlines or sense of urgency for the team, right? It would just be like, whenever you can get that done. I know there's a lot on your plate. There's no deadlines we're driving towards. I wouldn't have big strategic goals that we're going towards. Actually, what I would do is I would say we've already accomplished our big goal, and I would not think of a new one to drive the team forward. The third is that I would measure activity and not results. So if you look at complacent companies, a lot of times what they do is they measure activity that people are doing rather than the results people are getting. And so that's what I would do. I'd focus in all on the activity. How many hours are you working? I wouldn't focus at all on the results people are driving. And then the last, I would create a false sense of urgency within my team about how well we're doing in the market. I would continue to tell them, oh, we're the marketplace leader. You don't need to worry. We're going to do great. This business is around for the long haul. I would constantly reassure them rather than telling them the truth. And so the question really is, what's the opposite of that? The first thing that's the opposite of that is that I would would make sure everyone's on a mission. If somebody in your company is not on a mission, if they're clocking in, clocking out, you can be sure that they're not effective in their job. And they're certainly not giving it the extra oomph that many other people would that would help you drive towards your goals, right? So that's the first and foremost, is you've got to make sure everybody's on the same mission. The second is you've got to challenge your team with deadlines. You've got to challenge your team with targets. If you don't challenge your team, they're always going to remain stagnant. And this starts with the leader. If your team is stagnating, which means your business is stagnating, you have to challenge them with doing more than they've been doing. And you've got to set a new thermostat for them. We're no longer remaining complacent. We're now challenging ourselves. The third is that you would measure success by results. So no longer are we just measuring someone's success by, are they filling the seat and clocking in, clocking out, and get the hours done. We're measuring people purely upon results. We're probably going to show that to the whole company and hold everyone accountable to each other. And then the last thing that we would do is we wouldn't get an ego about ourselves, and we would remember that every single competitor is constantly waiting for us to slip up so they can take our market share. And so what is this really that we're trying to instill in your business? We're trying to instill a sense of urgency, because what happens is that you become successful, urgency goes down. And so how do you instill urgency? There's really a formula behind this. Urgency is really purpose plus opposing force over time. So I want to break that down piece by piece so you can understand what I mean by that. Purpose is the reason that your company exists. It's the mission that you're on. So you have to have purpose. Now, in order for there to be any sense of urgency over purpose, we need an opposing force, which is looking at maybe it's trends in the marketplace, maybe it's a competitor, maybe it's industry trends, maybe it's the economy in general. There's some kind of opposing force that you're working against, and then that is above time, which is the amount of pressure that you're putting on. So the way that you measure time in your company, whether that's days, weeks, months, is going to be what's going to set the tone for all of this. Because you can have purpose, you could have an opposing force, but if every time you say that you need something from someone, you say, get it to me next week, things are going to move slow in your company. And so you have to have the increment of time being measured in a smaller way in order to get that sense of urgency. So there's really 4 elements that you can instill in your company to create more of a sense of urgency and ultimately get past a plateau and actually grow your company. The first one is healthy skepticism. Healthy skepticism is the understanding that success is temporary if we stop doing the actions that got us success in the first place. A lot of teams, when they reach that first goal, because a lot of times when you set out as a founder, you have the one big goal and then you crush it and then you don't set another goal. And then you can't think, you're like, oh, I don't know what the next goal is. Like, I don't know. You basically run out of vision. When you do that, you give people a sense of pride that they wouldn't otherwise have. But what you need to do is you need to give them healthy skepticism. You need them to understand that things aren't always going to be this way, that what follows success is usually failure in seasons of tough time. We want to understand that success can be temporary, but that success will definitely be longer if we still act like we're not successful when we are. It's understanding that what worked yesterday won't work tomorrow. So what you're doing right now for your marketing, that's not going to work in 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, a year from now. Same with how you sell. The way that you sell, the people that you're selling to, it's going to change in the next 6 to 12 months. And so it's understanding that you always want to be proactive, because if you're skeptical that things are remaining this way, then you're constantly going to be looking forward, trying to figure out what you can do to innovate so you don't misstep when those things occur. The second is you want people to be action-oriented. So here's what happens over time, is that you get successful and you gain a certain amount of success, and then you tend to talk more than you do. As a company, it's like everything needs a meeting. Everything needs to be discussed. Everything has to be run by 17 different people. And that's what tends to happen over time, is you actually let operations drag you down rather than propel you forward. And so if you want to get back to being action-oriented, you've got to prioritize doing over talking. And so what you want to promote in your company is for people to make aggressive over passive mistakes. Aggressive mistakes are telling people that it's okay to fail. You expect them to fail because you as a founder fail. And it's okay to do that. You would prefer they fail trying something than fail by not trying something. So if you see that the people that you're selling to, the avatar is changing, the market's changing, then it's saying, hey, I prefer that you try 12 different tests and say we lose money, sure, but like at least you're trying, rather than just waiting until eventually sales go from 10 sales a week to 5 sales a week to 2 sales a week. And then finally you're like, now we have to do something, otherwise we're going to go out of business. You want people that can make aggressive mistakes, not passive mistakes. And then the last piece of that is we've got to correct quickly and don't dwell on it. People who dwell on their mistakes tend to slow down the business, because we spend all this time dwelling on the mistake that we made rather than taking that energy and time and putting it into creating a solution for the business to drive us forward and get past that rough spot. And now the third thing that you can do is you've got to be gritty. Here's what happens, and I can tell you this happened in our company in Gym Launch, and we had to completely redo the culture, is that as soon as we got a certain amount of success, like I told you in 2019, everyone got soft. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on. And I thought to myself, oh, well, we're not even there yet. There's not enough success. But because we were the market leader and it was so obvious, like the stark contrast between us and our competitors, people got soft. They got lazy, they got complacent. And so you have to instill a sense of grittiness in your team again. What you can do with that is essentially pursuing discomfort as a team. So you want to constantly be putting your team in a place of discomfort, whether that's trying new things, whether that's, giving each other feedback consistently, whether that's doing new courses, whatever it it is, put them in a place of discomfort. Even when that department doesn't specifically need to be, we want to condition people to always be in discomfort so that when it's needed, we can act upon it. And rather than that, if they're not able to do that, then they just remain complacent. And by the time you need people to get uncomfortable to make something move, they can't do it. Now, the last piece that can propel your team forward rather than stagnating over time and eventually declining is inspiration. Emotion drives action more than logic. And so what a lot of people lose over time is the founder in the beginning is so excited about everything. They're so driven. They're excited about the product. They're excited about the market. They're kind of in that like uninformed optimism period. And then what happens is that they start to see the shit from the business, because here's the thing, every business sucks once you've been doing it long enough. That's what I like to tell people. You finally find out what sucks about that business. And so once you're in it long enough, you find out what sucks. What you can't do is let that degrade your vision and inspiration to the team. You have to create different ways to stay inspired so that you can translate that to the team and you can drive people forward so they're excited to work every day. And so a lot of the way that you can do this is, I always tell people you want to speak in stories. When you're talking to your team and you're trying to excite them about the future, speak in stories rather than using the hard facts and presenting the data and the analytics and the charts. Like, that stuff's good as evidence, but people learn through stories and people's beliefs are broken through stories. And so a lot of what I would do when I was growing Gym Launch is go back and pull from Howard Schultz, from Jeff Bezos, from inspiring stories from other entrepreneurs who are maybe going through what we were going through in our business. And I would talk about what they did and how they overcame it and all these things. And I would bring that back to us and say, aren't we capable of doing the same? We're capable of being just as great as they are. And so that's how you can inspire teams. Just number one, speak through story. The last thing I'll say about inspiration is that inspiration comes from focusing on the why, not the how, or even the what. It's focusing on why we're doing what we're doing, because we want to be an example of greatness, because we want to beat the odds, because we want to be an example of what's possible. Whatever that is for you, repeating that over and over again and reminding people of who they are. If you're on this team, you are this. You are an example of greatness. You are an extension of us trying to be great. And so it's constantly reminding people of that and speaking belief into them when they maybe don't have it for themselves. So here's what I'll end with. As of right now, 460 of 500 Fortune 500 companies are no longer on the list that were 50 years ago. The amount that stayed in business for hundreds of years was much higher. And so what you see is that the rate of change in business now is so fast, we can't afford to remain complacent. We also can't afford to let present day success create future failure. And so I would share this video with my team. I would embed it in your mind, and I would understand that if you feel good right now, if you feel complacent right now, if you feel like things are easy right now, hit the gas.